The best of money matters. Right Business.
Welcome to The Right Business, where we dive deep into the stories of trailblazers who dare to disrupt the status quo, find the gap in the market to find the right business. Hello, I'm Hongbin Jeong. Opening a USD bank account should be simple, but for most people around the world, it's not. Passports get rejected, residency rules block access, paperwork piles up. And even if you're earning in USD, turning it into something you can actually use can feel impossible. For freelancers, digital nomads, and businesses working globally, this isn't just an inconvenience. It's a barrier that slows down their lives, their work, and their growth. PEXX was created to answer that by combining stablecoins with the strength of U.S. Treasuries. It offers borderless USD accounts, seamless transfers, and real-time payments without the friction of legacy banks or the speculation of crypto exchanges. They're all about making money move safely and instantly for the global generation. And to share more about how PEXX is making USD truly borderless, joining us today is Marcus Lim, founder of PEXX. Hi, Marcus. Welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me today.
Thank you so much for joining us. Well, Marcus, the story of PEXX is rooted in solving problems and that neither traditional banks nor crypto-first companies were addressing. So what exactly were those problems that others weren't tackling, and what made you realize you had to step in and create PEXX to solve them?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I think, firstly, let me sort of address the current trend of, US dollar stablecoins, as you guys are all aware of, which is USDT and USDC. And what we've sort of seen over the last 5 years is there's been a significant adoption of US dollar stablecoins, particularly in Southeast Asia, as most people use that as a store of value versus local currencies that are depreciating against the US dollar. So that's the first one in regards to thematics. The second is that there hasn't been a platform that has been built specifically to assist people who are using stable coins to be able to transact and make payments regionally and also globally. And so that's where PEXX comes in, where we provide a mobile application that simplifies the whole process and abstract away the complexities of blockchain in order for people to be able to use that on a day-to-day basis. So that's where we offer, Visa and MasterCard as powered by stablecoins, opening up US dollar bank accounts with JP Morgan, and also integrating with QR payments in Southeast Asia, where users then are able to travel abroad, not just here in Singapore, but Thailand, Indonesia, Philippines, Vietnam, and to be able to make payments through PEXX.
Okay. I mean, a lot of fintechs chase local currency markets, and many Web3 companies experiment with a variety of tokens. In your case, though, you made a deliberate choice to anchor PEXX in USD and stablecoins backed by U.S. Treasuries. Why did you specifically choose USD as the foundation instead of, other global currencies? Well, is that purely a strategic move, or do you see something unique about the role of USD that others have overlooked?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. I think first and foremost, the US dollar has been a world reserve currency for the last number of decades. And so most people in Southeast Asia, when they transact cross-border, have always dealt with stable coins, or rather in US dollars. So USD is a natural fit for us to be able to tackle and also to support, because naturally that's what people use. And I think sort of secondly is that, dollars, it is a currency that most people sort of are aware of as well. And it's easy to, is somewhat easier to sort of get access to. And the liquidity for US dollars is a lot better than other currencies itself. So those are sort of the three key reasons. Now, the fourth most underlying one is that because our platform is entirely built on stable coins, the biggest stable coin at the moment is USDT. Second to that is USDC. So all other sort of stable coins that are in the market at the moment, massively dwarfed by these two.
Interesting. So you created PEXX, a platform that gives users borderless access to USD accounts, payments, and transfers in a way that feels seamless and global. And you also describe PEXX as banking without borders. So what does banking without borders really mean, and how does PEXX bring that vision to life for your users?
Yeah, it's also a really good question. So when we sort of look at banking in the traditional sense, banks are typically set up in specific countries, jurisdictions, and regions where they support the local currency. And I think, the main challenge that we have in today is where you try to move money across different borders. It's extremely slow. arduous and costly. So we experienced that, especially for emerging economies in Southeast Asia, where you're trying to move, for example, Indonesian rupiah to Indian rupees or to Philippine pesos or to Vietnamese dong. They are very, very costly to be able to move around, and the liquidity in trying to move these currencies around is very illiquid as well. So the best way to sort of do this is the moving of these currencies with US dollars, in our case in stable coins, where the friction is dramatically reduced, and we're able to then, provide things to the customer when they're moving from, different country, from one country to another country. So this is going back to what your question is, which is, how do we make it borderless? Mm-hmm. Borderless by streamlining all this together by denominating the base currency with US dollars equivalent.
Right. So what does the onboarding journey look like, and how easy is it to get started and open an account then?
Yeah, so to open an account, it's pretty straightforward. You can go to our app store, either on iOS or Android, to download the app, as we're regulated and licensed out of Australia to complete what's known as an eKYC. So they need to complete, identification to ensure that the user is a legit platform. And then from there, they can actually start using the platform by depositing stablecoins and soon other currencies that convert into stablecoins.
Okay, and it looks like it speaks directly to freelancers, digital nomads, SMEs, and expats. I mean, people who often get left behind by traditional finance. So why did you decide to focus on these groups first rather than, mainstream banking customers? What makes access to USD so critical for their lives and livelihoods?
Great question. So, there are several use cases here. So maybe we can sort of break down some of these use cases. If we look at the amount of tourism that comes into Southeast Asia, there's about $50 to $60 billion every single year of expats, foreigners from either, Europe, the US, or sort of other parts of the world that come into Southeast Asia. And, as we start to see now the proliferation of QR payments, not just in Singapore with SGQR, Indonesia, QR PH in Philippines, Viet QR in Vietnam, and also PromptPay QR that's in Thailand. These are not ability to make those payments where it's fast and seamless. So what we're going to be able to do is to enable these foreigners to be able to make these payments, and in doing so, be able to boost, tourism in Southeast Asia itself. Also reducing the need for cash, which, as we all know, I think is sort of, it's a very dated concept going forward. So I think that's sort of the one big use case that we're trying to tackle. The second is that the gig economy over the last 5 years has exploded, especially in Southeast Asia. People are working from home, making an income, but their employers are not necessarily in the same country that they're in. And so getting paid in foreign currency sometimes is a huge mess and a nightmare. And so what we aim to do is to enable them to be able to receive money in, whether it's in US dollars, in euro, but then convert into stable coins, where then they can actually pay it back into their local bank accounts, whether it's in the Philippines or in Indonesia. And so that is a huge market in itself. And I think with the gig economy continue to grow, at about 4.5% CAGR every single year, this is a very useful tool for them to accept money and to be able to move it back into their own local currency so that they can actually spend it.
Interesting. PEXX claims to close 3 gaps, what banks won't offer, what exchanges can't deliver, and what neobanks still lack. So, Marcus, what makes you so confident that PEXX can compete simultaneously with banks, exchanges, and other neobanks? Yeah,
so the first one is that we do not have sort of the legacy and the bureaucracy of a bank. Our technology and infrastructure that we've built from day one incorporates all of the newest technology. So we do not have the legacy baggage that traditional banks like a DBS or an OCBC or a UOB would have, because most of their core banking softwares probably date back from the 80s or the 90s. So having to sort of update that would take, 4 to 5 years of digital transformation, which they may or may not be willing to sort of do so. So I think that's the first one, is that our technology stack is built very differently. Secondly is that our ability to onboard users through a seamless and compliant way allows us to be able to reach a lot of users that may or may not have access to typical sort of bank accounts. So if we sort of look at Indonesia as one example, 60% of the population banked or unbanked, meaning they do not have a bank account. And I think the proliferation of neobanks in this region has helped to obviously speed up that process of inclusion, but not just in Indonesia, but if you look at our neighboring countries like Thailand, Vietnam, and Philippines, this is a huge trend that is following suit as well. And we are to be able to adopt that trend and be able to help users to get online through a new type of banking with new type of infrastructure, and the type of baggage that we would not typically have with a traditional bank.
Okay, but how do you balance being innovative without, becoming too much like a bank or too much like a crypto platform?
Yeah, so the first one, being not too much like a bank, I think what we're looking at is what are the services that banks offer that people need, and what can we provide? And then this is what we have done from day one. So if we look at, sort of the banking pillars, on the core banking pillars, first one is being able to move money in, right? So deposits. Second is payments, and that's into card payments, where we provide Visa and MasterCard access. And then also QR code payments as well as the second one I've already mentioned. And the third one is accounts, right, where banks would offer yield on outstanding balances, where you put in the fixed term deposit. And then the fourth one is cross-border payment, domestically or internationally. So these are the four key things that we want to focus on. But what we want to do is we want to be able to keep it cost capital light. So we're not, they have ATMs or where they have sort of tellers or branches. Everything is, truly digital. So we don't have the legacy of a traditional bank. The second is, how are we not like a crypto company? So typical sort of crypto or Web3 companies or exchanges allow users to speculate in cryptocurrencies. That is definitely not our vision here. We would, in the future, allow people to invest. But I think the first core problem that we're trying to solve for is how do we provide core banking products and services a lot of people within this region and internationally as well.
So beyond entering, new markets, you're already live in 50 plus countries. How do you envision PEXX leading the charge and redefining what borderless finance looks like in the future?
Yeah, so I think we look at it from a multi-dimensional perspective. I think the first dimension is that we look at it from, a community-based approach, so grassroots. So looking at diasporas, in different countries or different regions where there are communities of certain people, for example, freelancers that are, comprised of people that are, whether they're Filipinos and Indonesians or whether they're Brazilians, we want to be able to provide our products and services and really educate the market from there. The second is going through country by country, and this is led by our product innovation. So, for instance, we've just launched, the ability to make QR payments in Vietnam. So PEXX can now make any, QR payments in Vietnam. And there are over 700,000 plus merchants in Vietnam that accept QR payments. And it's a completely seamless process from there. How we start to look to roll out is our first part of the strategy is to tackle, Southeast Asia or Asia Pac. And then from there to move to other continents of the world, for instance, South America, where our product would be most well served.
All right. Looking forward to it. Well, thank you so much, Marcus, for joining us and sharing to us more about PEXX.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. That was Marcus Lim, founder of PEXX. This has been The Right Business with me, Hongbin Jeong.
To listen to more great interviews, download our podcasts at audio.sg or download the audio app. That's AWEDIO, audio at the App Store and Google Play.